My name is Catherine Fife. I have been the member of provincial parliament here in Waterloo since 2012, so I'm in my 13th year. I have served as the Finance and Treasury Board critic for the official opposition at Queen's Park for a number of years now. I've been following the money. And I hope I get some money questions, because I always say that when you follow the money, you follow the real priorities of a government, right? It's not just the press releases and the photo ops. And I've lived here in Waterloo for the last 25 years, and I have a son, Aiden, who's 26, just got married. He's an electrician, and my daughter Claire is working up in Ottawa on an election. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Catherine. I see we have Clayton here as well. Okay, it's not a toy. My name is Shafaza. I am the Ontario Green candidate for this election, and I also ran in the past election. This is my daughter, Azani, who is 18 months old and very curious, but also shy of strangers. I'm running in this election, and as I did in the past election, because I was teaching at the University of Waterloo, and I noticed that when I was teaching the students about the policies that have eroded our environmental protection, they were very worried about their future, and I wanted them to have hope for that future. So that's why I've decided that I will run again and voice the policies in the Green Platform that are there to protect what we love, our natural resources, the farms where we get our food from, the water resources so that we can continue to have clean drinking water, and also create more future-proof housing and development so that we are not stuck in the same issue as Toronto every time there's a storm event and lots of flooding. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it on to Clayton Moore.
Thanks so much, and thank you everyone so much for having me. My name is Clayton Moore, and I'm the Ontario Liberal candidate in Waterloo. This is my first time running, and if I'm being honest, I'm probably not a natural politician. My background is in science. I studied molecular biology and genetics, moved on to get a graduate degree where I studied the evolutionary history of viruses, and moved on to work in scientific industries, moving on to scientific communications, where I really worked hard to try and make sure that researchers could take really complex, innovative ideas and translate them into ideas that people can really understand, resonate with, and help secure funding for some amazing research happening all around the world, particularly in Canada and the US. And I ultimately decided to put my hat in the ring and run for this first time because I'm starting to get worried about our future. A lot of the policies that I'm seeing are so short-sighted, and they're not designed with a future plan in mind. We know that we've already got a housing crisis that needs desperately to be addressed. We know that our healthcare system is getting underfunded. If you've ever had to wait in an emergency room, you've seen how bad it can get. And we know that we need to make sure that we're planning for the future to make sure that we've got an environmentally sustainable way that we're building to make sure that Ontario is still going to be a safe, sustainable place for years to come. As a scientist, it's been my job to really make sure that we're analyzing our data here and that we're building for the future and building for a sustainable way that we can solve problems now, make sure that we've got people in a position where they're safe, sustainable, they've got some spare money in their pockets now, but also build towards that prosperity. And I think I bring a really unique perspective in here. And on February 27th, then you've got a couple of excellent candidates in front of you. So I'm really excited to hear more about what they have to say and share a couple of my ideas for what I think can make Ontario an even better place to live that's going to make everybody really proud.
Which party you represent?
I'm with the Ontario Liberal Party. Thanks so much. She looks like she's having a great time with them, so I would not part her with that.
Thank you. From your opening remarks, we know that you care about our community. And we have collected some questions from our community members. And the very first question is about the rising crime rates and the safety. Who wants to start to answer this question about the public safety and crime rates?
Just rotate through.
Yeah.
So I started first, and then maybe
Okay.
we'll vote.
Sure. I'll do that first.
This has been a real concern, especially recently, for sure over the past few years. I think one of the main reasons here is that there's a lot of divisiveness in our narrative coming from politics, not just at the federal and provincial level, but also externally. It's like a blow in the face. And people are facing a lot of hardships. And in order for them to feel safe, to feel like they can survive, they need to be, they need to feel supported, right? But this, well, when we don't have supports from the provincial level, especially when we put more resources into enforcement instead of leading with compassion, then we're telling people, go try to make crime and then we're going to catch you, or like try to make crime so that you don't get caught. But then that's not really what we want to focus on, right? We want to focus on like, what is the root cause of these crimes and how can we lead in a way that nurtures the, thank you. How can we lead so that we're preventing things from happening instead of letting them happen and then figuring out the enforcement? So this is something I was also talking with students from the University of Waterloo. When the ION was first put into place, the first thing that they did was put in enforcement officers to check fares. But the point of the ION was to provide public transport for people. So why are we checking fares and making it so that people are unable to access it if they don't have the right amount of money, or if they just needed to get from one place to another and they forgot to fill their carts? So there needs to be policies in place that allow people access, that allow people supports, so that they don't feel like they have to resort to crime in order to get by.
Once again, my name is Catherine Fife, and I'm from the NDP and the official opposition in Ontario. We as a party have a holistic view, a whole of community approach to addressing crime, right? So just as been mentioned, is that the root causes of crime in our community are very much connected sometimes to poverty, like knocking on doors. I'm sure we can all say people are afraid out there and people are worried about their future. That we also do have a rise in addictions and mental health issues that have also had a negative impact on those crime rates. I do want to say, though, there is a real big issue in the province of Ontario with our justice system, in that you can get more helicopters, sometimes you can put more cops on the road, but at the end of the day, when they interact with the justice system, they are waiting too long for their day in court, and often those cases are dispensed and stayed. So you have violent offenders in the province of Ontario who are being released back out onto the street to reoffend. So and the police, Waterloo Region Police, have done an amazing job in our community, and they've really embraced, under the leadership of this current chief, community policing, which actually is building trust and relationships across the entire community. And then, so once you establish that trust, though, and police officers do their job, then you have people, interacting with the court system and finding that there's no accountability. There's actually no justice. So if we're missing a key part of community community policing and community justice by having a failing justice system. So I brought forward Lydia's Law in Ontario, which was meant to ensure that people who sexually assault people get their day in court, and victims of those crimes also receive the appropriate supports and compensation so that they can move forward with their lives. Unfortunately, Doug Ford sent my bill right to committee without debate and without discussion because they don't want to be held to account. So everyone thinks that Conservatives are so tough on crime, but they're actually very weak and they're investing where they shouldn't be. So the justice system in Ontario is broken, it needs to be fixed, and we have a plan to do so.
We've got folks that are walking free. We have violent criminals. We have rapists that are walking free because we don't even have enough judges in the system. This is a failure of the system. I think we need to make sure that we're addressing everything on all sides. Locally, I'm embarrassed to say that we've seen an incredible rise in hate crimes in the Waterloo region. It's devastating to see. And it's a backlash because people are struggling And people are taking it out on folks that absolutely do not deserve it. Because of that, normal everyday people are facing the consequences. And quite frankly, it's an embarrassment to see everything. We need to make sure that we are supporting folks so that they don't feel that they do need to go into any level of crime, whether it be petty, but on top of that, serious level of crimes need to be addressed. We need to make sure that police presence is known and that people know that they face consequences. If you face a crime, the justice system needs to actually work and respond to people so that if you're caught doing anything, if you have a violent crime, if you're doing anything negative, our system needs to work swiftly to make sure that you face actual consequences. And we also need to make sure that everyone across all levels has the support that they need so that you don't feel the need to do petty crimes. Something like shoplifting if you can't afford if you can't afford for groceries. There are plenty of resources out there. I encourage you to take advantage of the Waterloo Region Food Bank if anyone you do know is facing those insecurity levels. There are options. There's lots of support out there. We need to make sure that we are expanding those because crime should never be seen as a first option. We want to make sure that support is there to protect people before you ever even enter that system. But we need to make sure that we're taking this really, really seriously and to make sure that we're combating hate crime. At the end of the day, we do need to make sure that people know that people in Waterloo Region here are all here to work hard. We need to make sure that people understand that Waterloo Region is boosted by its diversity. People coming in here are starting businesses, are employees, and we need to make sure that more and more people recognize that. Immigration is an incredible strength here, so I hate seeing this rise in hate crimes. This is absolutely unacceptable, so we need to make sure that we're investing in programs that make sure that everyone understands the benefit that people bring to this community. And hopefully we can start to see that driving down just through those levels of acceptance, because as things get normalized, as we start to share a little bit more about who we are as people, as cultures, we can make such a big, big difference here in terms of making that difference. So I think we need to have a really serious impacts on just normalizing everything, normalizing our differences, making sure that people understand there's a support system for them, and having a strong judiciary system that is capable of actually responding to some of the worst and violent crimes amongst us.
Actually, Clayton just reminded me of one other thing. It's about where the government's priorities are, right? The Ford government just brought in a new piece of legislation that was meant to criminalize people who are homeless. So, people who live in tents in Ontario in the winter, it's not like they want to be there. Do you know what I mean? But Doug Ford brought in a piece of legislation that was going to charge those people $10,000 per person. There was a fine for being homeless. If you're living in a tent in the winter, you don't have $10,000 to pay a fine. Nor is that an effective way for policing to be used in Ontario, right? I think that we all think that there has to be some compassion and a balance between actually finding some solutions, but recognizing that there's a number of issues why people are homeless in Ontario, and some of those causes are actually the fault of the Ford government.
Thank you very much. Next question is concerning immigration.
Can I ask you questions? What's the solution you have, your party have, if I vote for you?
Well, thank you very much. So I think you're referring to the last piece around the
Yes.
encampments.
Yes.
Because now we have encampments in every community across Ontario. Homelessness has increased by 25% since 2021. So we actually have a strategy, and I'm sure that we all have our plans to address housing.
What's
The platform is that we focus on deeply attainable and affordable housing, and this is called our Homes Ontario Plan, which means that government would use government land and low financing to ensure that the not-for-profit sector and cooperative housing are part of the solution. They know how to build housing right in our communities. And let's be honest, the developers who are currently, building beautiful homes, they're not in the business of building rent geared to income housing. Do you know what I mean? They want to make profit. That's their business model. This is fine. The government does play a role to fill that gap, which is deeply affordable, attainable housing. And when you think of the investment, this also stabilized the economy. Housing for us is healthcare because people who live in tents get sick and it costs the healthcare system a lot of money. So our Homes Ontario plan is on our website. I would urge you to have a look at it. But it's a there's a continuum of options that have to be put into play. Do not believe anybody when they say, oh, there's nothing we can do. There's definitely something that we can do.
Yeah, where's money come from? So consider right now the budget is very short. Where the money come from?
Where the money is going is the problem. And as the finance critic, I can tell you, I wouldn't have spent $661 million so that people can buy a White Claw in a corner store at a gas station, right? $661 million is still a lot of money. And it's about really messed up priorities on this government around where they're investing and where they're not investing.
I also encourage you to make sure that you look at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario's report that they had released, that's AMO, where they discuss exactly this. Our municipalities are doing a heck of a lot of work here already with virtually no resources. Ontario is the only province where we're asking municipalities to deal with this alone because Doug Ford doesn't care. He's not trying to solve this problem. So he's perfectly okay with homeless encampments popping up all over the place. Across from my former office, we had an encampment there that was just stuck for, I think, over 8 months, where the provincial government was actually more willing to just pay a security guard to watch it 24/7 than try and do anything to support that. Municipalities all understand their local resources a heck of a lot better than Queen's Park ever will because they are there, they see everything as it's unfolding locally. They're already really capable at delivering services. They do not have the resources that we need. So we really need to make sure that we're partnering with municipalities all across the province to make sure that they've got access to funding that they need to actually support some of these programs, to get people moved out into more sustainable housing options for these encampments. We can get people the support that they need for addiction counseling. Because at the end of the day, homelessness can happen to anybody. It can happen because you fall onto an unexpected illness, and then you have to you have to burn through all of your existing spending. It might mean that you can't get a job afterwards. If you can't work for more than an hour a day, this can be really tough and it can sneak up on anybody. In the Toronto Star, just before Christmas, a former member of provincial parliament is now actually living on the streets in Toronto. It's sad to see and it can happen to anybody. He's got a law degree and that's happening. So we need to make sure that we've got services to actually lift people up, to find sustainable housing for them. And I believe working with our municipalities is one of the strongest ways that we can actually do that, to make sure that people are being offered the services that they need to support. And then they're working along with some of our partners like Tiny Homes here locally to make sure that we're providing an affordable alternative, making sure that people have options rather than just defaulting to these homeless encampments. I'll pass things over to Shafisa.
As far as I know, this drive.
It's her turn.
Yeah.
Can
I ask a question?
please? Yes.
I'll just answer that same question you had about where's the money going to come from. So what Catherine said, in addition to that, a lot of money is going into the Highway 413 as well as ripping up bike lanes. So a lot of our money is actually being misallocated by the current government. Okay, you can hold it. So we need to look at where the priorities are of the current government and then figure out how can we take the money that they're misallocating and direct it towards better housing in the municipalities. Like Clayton was saying, working with the municipalities, they've already figured out on their own plans with consultation which lands would be better for development. So the province really needs to put in money now, right? And put in that support so that it's not market-based housing, it's provincial and municipality partnered housing. And with that, adding wraparound supports, and this is part of the Green Party platform, making sure that not only are we providing better and affordable rates of living, but also having the services that people need I think I'm doing okay. It's okay. That people need, depending on whatever their situation is. If it is addiction, then having centers that provide the services that they need, either to recover from those or to safely use the drugs until they can find a better plan for recovering from that, right? So there needs to be a better collaboration from the province with municipalities, rather than having this divisive nature, which the current government is doing, where he's pitting municipalities and regions against each other and then trying to usurp land for their own benefit.
Next question is about immigration. You can see we have a lot of immigrants here in this city and also in this region. And we want to know, how would you propose certain policies that can help immigrants to be better integrated into our society and can be active contributors to the society, and at the same time can access to social resources equally?
It's a really great question here, and this kind of comes back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier, that we do want to make sure that people understand that immigration is our strength, that differences are our strengths, and really making sure that we've got opportunities to mix, mingle, to share in cultures. I think your Lunar New Year celebration, I think just last Saturday, was an incredible example of that, where when we share in cultures, then it really demystifies a lot of this. It's, we're building a lot closer towards this, but unfortunately what we've seen is a lot of divisive rhetoric, particularly on news, on social media, where folks are really struggling with that. And on top of that, it's partly because we end up having a bit of a loneliness epidemic, particularly amongst young people, where people aren't interacting with folks, period, and end up distrusting people that are coming in here locally. Let's be honest. Life in Ontario is harder than it was 7 years ago. It's as simple as that. And time again, we see immigrants being a scapegoat here. It's absolutely not the cause. Doug Ford's irresponsible decisions are the reason that we're worse off than we were. But people are blaming immigrants, which is the wrong way.
Immigrant, not province problem.
Yeah,
it's a federal government to make a decision who can come.
I agree.
I'm not
The federal government has a lot of influence over here in terms of how everything comes in.
Illegal immigrant, they came to our country, live in the hotel. We spend a lot of money. This money can go to the affordable house.
So the federal government.
Right? So for that person live in the tent, instead you rent the hotel, expensive. Give them free money, come here, then they don't work, they get money.
So what the federal government, can I please
That's
answer, sorry, can I please answer the question here? So the federal Liberal Party had let in a lot of temporary immigrants, particularly international students, and there weren't strong regulations there.
They came
It was
in not
not-
study, they just go for work.
I understand. Can we? I think we all want to make sure we get through this, and we have until 3 p.m. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I'll stick around after 3 p.m. to chat a little bit further. But I think I want to make sure that we all get heard in here. And what had happened here, there was a shockingly little amount of collaboration between the federal government and provincial governments. We weren't able to ramp up housing. We weren't able to ramp up support systems. We weren't able to create enough jobs to support people that were coming in. And as a result, people could not support themselves. We need stronger collaboration. We need to understand what's coming on a provincial level to actually be able to respond to it and build in kind. The federal government made a mistake here. Mark Miller has admitted this, and they've started to make that reversal. We've started to see a cooling in rental markets. But because of that, we have not necessarily seen everything clear throughout here. There's still not enough jobs for young folks. People are struggling. This is going to be a temporary thing. We're going to see an easement with the changes that we've seen on that federal level, but to make sure that things like this don't happen again, we need much clearer lines of communication between federal and provincial governments. We can't be told to respond with something on a dime, because housing doesn't just happen. You have to build it, and you have to build it with a plan. The federal government needs to tell us what their plan is so that we can plan accordingly. Immigration is a good thing. We should continue it. It grows our economy. and it creates jobs, and plenty of immigrants come in and start businesses. My first job out of university was founded by a professor from the University of Waterloo. This is a great thing, but we need to make sure we have much more collaboration so that we can build for a plan for the future. I'll maybe pass things back. Who we have next in order? Shabaza?
Yeah, must be legal immigrant.
So I'm hearing there's like two sentiments here. There's two sentiments. One is immigration as like through the processes, and then immigration that occurs outside of the processes. I am also an immigrant. My family moved here when I was 12 years old, and you say that life is hard right now, but life was hard at that time as well. Right after we moved from Tanzania to here in July 2001, September 2001, we had the 9/11 incident. And I am a Muslim. So already at that time, there were sentiments outside that were against Muslims, right? So the thing is, when we have people of diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, there will always be some friction. There will always be some tensions. There's always a fear of the unknown, right? When you don't know who the other person is or what their background is, how does that relate to you? Are you even going to have the same values to talk about? And then there's global events that play into our fears. And then that translates to crime, right? Hate crimes. So for me, what I see is that there needs to be support at all levels of government when it comes to immigration. Yes, federal level is the one that makes a lot of the policies, that puts in the quotas of how many people are allowed to come into the country and where they should be able to settle, because we have a large country, we have a lot of different cities where we have the capacity to grow. But that's not what happens at the provincial level, right? If someone comes into Toronto, what's stopping them from moving out to Vancouver? Or if someone comes into Quebec, what's stopping them from coming into Toronto? So there needs to be a little bit more of a plan when the federal level chooses to put out more quotas or less quotas. They need to be able to talk with the provinces. So if it's more for international students, then there has to be conversation between the federal level and the provincial on the colleges and the universities. Will you have the supports to provide housing, to provide jobs for these additional international students that are getting these visas, right? So I agree with Clayton where we do need to have better communication and collaboration from the federal level to the provincial, but then in addition to that, from the provincial to the municipal. Our system right now is not talking because we are very divisive on our party levels, right? Instead of working for our constituents, we're working for our party. And this is where the Green Party is different. We do not whip our MPs or our MPPs into voting a certain way. They vote for the constituents and the needs of the riding, not for the needs of the party. And that's where we would do things differently.
So just to clarify, obviously federal is immigration, but the question was how can we ensure that immigrants, when they come into Ontario, that they can be successful and they can be appropriately integrated. I got into politics because of education. Education, when we get education right, a lot of things fall into place. The economy, the skill sets, equity, and people reaching their potential, and that's actually what we want. So the education system, so I'm just going to pivot, right now in Ontario is being underfunded by, per student, $1,300 per student. So when you look at Ontario and you compare it to other provinces, the provincial government is intentionally underfunding education. That means English as a second language or ELL. These are resources that ensure that people can reach their potential and that they can be actually very marketable at some point for jobs. I also just want to say, as the finance critic, that for 13 years, businesses have been coming to the finance committee and asking for more immigration. They have been asking for skilled workers, targeted immigration to come into Ontario to fill those gaps, right? So we have to find the balance, I think. In Conestoga College, I just want to tell you, I was at the food processing facility there. International students, so the federal government did a full cap on international students. International students were actually coming to Conestoga College, taking the food processing diploma and coursework and being hired. And they were filling a gap in the economy. And there was English as a second language supports affiliated with that. So we know how to get it right. And I think at the end of the day, we should also remember that all of us are immigrants in this country, except for First Nations and Indigenous peoples. Okay? So when we get it right, it goes really well. There have been obviously some gaps in communication and policy application that need to be addressed. But as a New Democrat, as the official opposition, we want to see people reach their potential, and that means you invest appropriately into education.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question, which is on behalf of all of us and the WCCA. Because of the loopholes we have in terms of how to help immigrants communities, the WCCA has been working very hard to help them at the community level. And we have a lot of people, but we have very few resources, close to zero, because every time we have to apply some funding, $7,500, $10,000, and if you have seen our New Year celebration, you know this is not enough, right? So now, we also need spaces. We don't have space at all. We have to rent. Every time, even like this space, we have to ask other people to help us, right? With money or with kindness. So now, the question is for three of you. How would you help us if you are elected?
I understand the struggles of that because I belong to the Smiley community, and we also have an overflowing community of people as more people have settled in this region, and our space for prayers is also quite small. For me, if elected, it's hard to make these decisions. When I came to Canada, the biggest support I had was from my community. And if they didn't have the support of the larger community, then we wouldn't be able to have been integrated into this community or been able to move from Mississauga to Kitchener as I have done. So for me, what I would do is speak with a lot of the communities that are out there that are helping immigrants, but also just people who are already within the community and building that sense of community. What resources do you need? And then figure out if there's a way for different communities to share resources. Because it might be hard to say, okay, we have resources to give to this community, we have resources to give to this community, and then kind of run out of money, right? How can we connect these different communities, like the Smiley Association with the Chinese Association, and work on a plan where the resources are shared, the spaces might be shared, or in terms of events, our events may be a little bit offset from your events, but we could have a shared event space, right? So I think that's what I would do, is talk to a lot of the other communities and figure out how we can all work together and make a more inclusive, larger community.
Really good question. It was alluded to before that these municipalities across Ontario have a huge lobby right now to have the provincial government take back their funding responsibilities on infrastructure, on housing, and such. So municipalities right now are very cash strapped because they're doing the provincial government's job. So what we want to do is we want to upload those costs back up to the province, leaving municipalities to truly engage, because municipalities are the closest level of government to community, and so therefore know their community the best. So this would free up a lot of funding to ensure that every community finds their strength, but also finds a true partner at the local level. And that means, direct grants at the local level, and also because the City of Waterloo knows your association so well, we show up all the time at your events. We've established a relationship. We're building trust. We're learning from each other. That's how you actually build stronger, diverse communities across Ontario. And so that would be our plan.
Thank you, and it's such a good question. I don't think this has ever actually even been brought up to me. It's and now I'm sitting back to thinking at any board I've ever sat on, thinking, shoot, yeah, it would be. We've always had to rent space, and this can be really challenging for folks. It can be a drain on resources, and if you're forced to spend all this money, it just means it's not stuff that you can do for community engagement. So it can be a huge drain for any organization. That means you can't do the work that you want to be doing just because you're forced on that. I think Catherine's exactly right here. At the end of the day, municipalities are here to support people. They understand those local organizations, how much of an impact that they have, and they are being forced to pay for nearly everything. Consistently, time and time again, everything's being downloaded onto cities. So, quite frankly, municipalities need a new deal. Municipalities need support from our province, and the province need to step up and actually commit to paying their fair share so that municipalities can get back to doing what they do best, and that's helping folks out directly. When a community group does need that support, they should know who to go to, and it shouldn't be some nameless bureaucrat in Toronto. It should be somebody here locally that has an understanding of the association, that has that relationship, that makes that process easy for everybody and makes it possible for you to work together. So I think we absolutely need to make sure that we're protecting our municipalities here so that municipalities can support their citizens in a much more direct way rather than being forced to handle on provincial responsibilities like we've been asking them to do for way too long now. But really, really good question. And it's the first time I've heard it, and I think it's such a fair call out and such a call out on how municipalities need to make sure that they're getting the support that they need to support our people.
Can I just jump in?
Thank you very much. Now
She wants to jump.
now
It's
I wanted to actually invite our president. Now we are open the floor to the audience.
So if you elected, how do you decrease the criminal rate in Waterloo, Kitchener? Now it's an increase. Why you catch and free?
I'll take you, yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like so the police force is doing their job, right? The detectives are doing their job. I'm sorry, the police are doing their job. Then they go to the justice system and the court system, and that court system is underfunded. Sometimes court cases for serious criminals are being thrown out and released because they don't have enough money for a courtroom police officer, a court officer. They don't have a stenographer, they don't have a judge, they don't have enough crown attorneys. So this system is that, it's pretty, this is the way that the Ford government has been talking about, is that we're going to catch those criminals, and yet then they get released because the court system, which is a provincial responsibility, is underfunded and quite broken. And don't take my word for it. The Attorney General for the province of Ontario has cited that Ontario's court system is releasing more sexual assault offenders and rapists than any other province in Ontario. So imagine, like, if you're a victim of a violent crime like that, and then you see your the person who's offended you, and there's no justice, there's no accountability. And so that is why you see increased criminal rates in Ontario. You can't just have a strong police force and then just let criminals walk free when they go into the court system. The other issue is our correctional system in Ontario is, again, very broken. So right now, I think the government is really focusing just on, the bail reform, which, it needs to be looked at without a doubt. But what's within the control right now of the provincial government is our court system. And there is a saying that justice delayed is justice denied. This should be on every courtroom in Ontario right now, because this is actually what's happening with people walking free. And then they're out and then they reoffend. And listen, the damage that's happening across Ontario, I'm focused on women because the sexual assault cases keep going up, right, in Ontario. And this is a heinous and one of the worst crimes that exist right now. I know people are very focused on stolen cars, and listen, it's a huge violation of trust, right? When your property is damaged or stolen. But let's have a holistic view here of what's actually going on in Ontario. There's a cost to having a broken justice system, and that cost is both to the healthcare system, to the education system, and to community safety. And the work before us on this file is immense.
So I just want to clear, car thief still criminal or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Stealing a car is criminal. We completely agree with this. And at the end of the day, this is getting worse and worse. I had a friend who just in November, he was sitting at home with his family, and then he woke up, and then his car was gone.
Yeah.
And when he called the cops, he said, "Oh, we can't do anything about it." He knew exactly where the car was. It had GPS in it, and he could tell them exactly where to go, but they aren't willing to invest the resources to doing it because it is such a pervasive problem. That's a problem with policing, but at the end of the day, this is such a major problem, and you're right, this is across the entire country because it has become so easy to get a vehicle out of the country incredibly quickly. This is a sophisticated network, and this can't be dealt with exclusively provincially. We need to be partners with the federal government, but at the end of the day, the federal government needs to step up to figure out who these organizers are. Because this isn't one or two people, this isn't a couple of thugs that are going in and taking cars. This is people who have a network that can get vehicles to ports and then across across oceans in a couple of days. So that's not an underplanned effort.
That's organized crime.
That is absolutely organized crime that we need to be able to respond to, and we cannot do that alone provincially because this isn't just a single network. We need to partner with the federal government. This is a problem. I wish I had a magic wand that could solve all of this. I'm sure we all do. I don't think anyone here is going to come out pro-car thief. But at the end of the day, this is something that we need to put pressure on our federal government to solve. We got a heck of a lot of issues that are problems nationwide. We can say housing is only a problem in Ontario. It's not. We know that housing is a problem across the entire country.
Thank you. Another question, if you don't mind, I'm asking. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, we were talking, even from the beginning, we were talking about the housing issues, so like criminal rate. Yes, everybody say, okay, we have a plan, we can do this, we can do that, we can figure out this. My question is, how this happen? Why is criminal rate
Only these 3 years.
increase? Why so many homeless? Yes, we have a huge country. We have a lot of land, and why we have so many homeless here? I remember when I immigrated here, I would say, oh, thanks Canada. It's such a nice country. It's people friendly. It's so peaceful. I don't even need to close the door, during the night, right?
Yes.
I would like to say this country try to create equal opportunities to everyone lives here. It's such a great. But last couple of years, we can see, I'm not going to use any words, but like this, right? And I just wonder, I just wonder, how this happens? Why is the reason? Just like, okay, in the winter, our roof's leaking. Okay, gotta find out where's the crack, or we just put a barrel under.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just recent 3 years.
The barrel under there is still a plan, but we have to figure out why, right?
so Canada still is a great country. We got our challenges, but it's still worth fighting for. And I think we need to make sure that we are taking this focus on actually solving these problems. These aren't just Band-Aid type solutions. This isn't putting a barrel on the ground. We have let a ton of systems completely fall apart because we've ignored the infrastructure. On the judicial system, people are committing crimes and violent crimes and getting away with it because they're not even being tried. They're getting let out because their court date was delayed by so much because we don't even have enough
Because it's
judges to
easy.
see people. Our systems have failed us, and because of that, we have people who should be behind bars who are let out without even a trial date. We know they're guilty, everyone knows they're guilty, but our judicial system is not equipped. It has been underfunded, it has been undersupplied, it has been ignored for entirely too long that serious criminals have had the chance to just walk free. That is something that we need to fix immediately. One of the quickest and easiest solutions is making sure that we appoint enough actual justices. And on top of that, we need to make sure that they do have the funding that they need to make sure that the operations in there. Catherine and I mentioned this really well, so I'm not going to repeat too much in here, but our judicial system needs incredible work. Our housing system needs incredible investment and incentives to get developers who actually build. We need to make sure that we have land zoned and ready to build density where it's appropriate so that we have enough housing for people that actually need it, where they need it. This isn't just luxury one bedrooms. This isn't just condos. We need to make sure that we've got the resources there for folks to build. Right now, to answer your question, why are we failing so much? It's because government's priorities aren't in the right places. We're not trying to solve long-term solutions. We're trying to put Band-Aid solutions so that we can get quick wins, so that we can stop the bleeding, and then we can get a couple of news headlines out of it, and then, hey, maybe 4 years later you re-elect us. I don't think that's the approach that we need to be taking towards a lot of these issues, because these are issues that are going to take historic action, they're going to take dedication, and it's going to take dedication over more than just 4 years. We need to make sure that we're taking investment to not just think about our lives, but think about our kids. Think about how this is going to impact things 50 years down the line, and have policy that can adapt with the times. Life is a whole heck of a lot different than it was even 10 years ago, and we need policy that can actually adapt to that. A lot of these problems can be solved if we put some effort into solving the root causes and supporting and identifying the systems that are done, or that actually support people, that actually solve these problems. I don't want to say that you're wrong in here. Crime is on a rise. And a lot of that is because people are struggling. People are turning to last resources. So we need to make sure that we're supporting people and supporting the system that actually go in. If we look from judicial system all the way up to things like the landlord-tenant board, everything is ground to a halt. So why do people do this? Because there's no consequence right now. So we need to make sure that our systems are funded so that there is actually consequences in there. But on top of that, I mean, ordinary people are struggling. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing actually solving those problems. The Liberal Party has proposed a tax cut to make sure that everyone's got at least $1,000 more in their pocket, to make sure that we're supporting people so that they don't need to turn to these drastic measures. But we have a whole heck of a lot more work that we need to do, and we can't design this on a 4-year event horizon. We got to start thinking about what things are going to look like over the next 50 years. I could go on and on and on about this because these are incredible issues. These are incredibly big issues, and we brought up about 4 or 5 in here. But I want to make sure I give Shafaza a chance to speak in here. I'll stick around if we want to dive into any specific issue deeper. But to me, we want to make sure we're taking evidence-based policy making incredibly seriously and designing for the future, not just our problems now.
What's the plan for the illegal immigrants?
Can we talk afterwards? I know I want to make sure that everyone's got a chance. So
Yeah.
I'll stick around. Please come talk to me and we can talk about how we can address that.
So I'll start off by saying something I didn't say at the beginning. I'm by profession an engineer. So problem solving is really the bread and butter of what I do. And when you ask that question about how did it get to here, the answer actually is we were already there. This housing crisis has been there for a long time. It didn't get to this point that it is right now before, but it was there already. It was starting. And previous governments, the current Ford government, had a previous term, right, where they could have made things better. During the pandemic, for example, there were a lot of different changes that happened to people's lives. There were people who needed support during that time. We needed policies in place to meet the demands of the growing population so that there would have been housing, affordable housing for the growing population. You can see trends before they even get there, right? What the previous government and the current government failed to do was see where these trends are going and plan for the future. If we let them continue, then they're just going to go backwards. What we've already built, we've built bike lanes. What are they trying to do? They're trying to rip it out. That's money we're spending on ripping something out instead of building something better. What is the other plan? Build tunnels under Toronto. What about the rest of Ontario? on a floodplain. How much money is it going to take to build under Toronto, to make new tunnels so that we can drive faster? What if that money instead goes to putting up better housing that can be affordable for these people that are currently living in shelters like tents or even homeless shelters, right? We're not seeing that part either. The women's homeless shelter shut down in Waterloo region. Where do the women go now?
Hotel.
They
Yes.
can't afford it.
Yes.
Government gonna pay that.
But but why isn't there already affordable housing for them? Why isn't there already a place where they can get that support that they need so that they can get back on their feet and then support themselves, right? So that's where we need to have a change in government, a change in our thinking, so that we can lead with that compassion that we need to support everybody. Our communities here, your community here, as well as the people who are struggling, who are homeless. Think about the fact that when we are looking at our system, we are trying to solve the problems of the people. But what the current government is doing is like, nah, those are not my problems. My problem is, how do I get someone from this point to that point 1 minute faster by building a very big highway? Why can't we instead put intercity public transit so that people can be more mobile, right? And if they have a place here, which is affordable, but then they find a job in Mississauga or in Toronto, they can take public transit and not have to spend money on getting a car, which is also very expensive, right? And with the increased carjacking, might even get stolen. So think about, what problems are we actually trying to solve, and then put money towards that rather than making new problems, which is what the current government is doing.
I
So.
don't agree.
Just very quickly, the question was, how do we get here? The federal government abdicated their responsibility for social housing 25 years ago. Mike Harris in the late 1990s got out of the non-market housing sector. Oh, is it around here? Okay, right. Got out of the non-market housing sector, and in fact even let the current social housing that existed fall into disrepair. You wouldn't do that if you were a smart business person. You maintain those investments. So I just want to say on housing is the stabilizer for everything: health, education, the economy. And if we don't get it right, then we've missed an opportunity. So that is why we are looking at investing in non-market housing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the people, you'd be surprised. There are people who are living in those tents over on Victoria Street who go to work every day. Right? They go to work, but they cannot afford housing. So the other part is that there's a lot of renters in Ontario who feel very vulnerable right now because Doug Ford removed rent control. And I have seniors in my office, mostly senior women, who are on fixed income. But because the rent control has been removed, they can see their rent go up $150, $200 a month. They can't afford it. So you should not, at the age of 86, find yourself being evicted from your home. Surely we can agree on that. Seniors in Ontario deserve so much better. So the housing file would be our top priority for us going forward. And listen, I mean, there's lots to say about the Ford government. Certainly the Greenbelt scandal was never about housing. It was about McMansions. McMansions are not going to save us in a housing crisis. We stabilize the renters. We have targeted investments in non-market housing. We get people out of tents.
Yeah, my question is, I agree
Thank you
that
so very
they need-
much.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Just,
I just agree, we should have, equal opportunities to support everyone, right? So my question is, who qualify can live in that luxury hotel for free, whole year long? Every time I do the business travel, I try to find the hotel. Sometimes I go to the hotel, no room available. Why? Because, we have so many people living here. They're living here for free. But who qualifies? My question is, just like you mentioned that, so many people working every day, they still live in the tent. And so many people live in the luxury hotel, they don't have to work.
Yes.
Why? Who qualify live in that hotel? Is that, I mean,
it's not a long-term plan, right? It's a short-term plan.
I'm not so sure because I met that person living there. I asked them, how long are you going to live in here? We need a room for business travel. But that guy said, oh, that's our home. We're going to live here forever.
Yeah.
That's the answer from that people. That person, yeah, yes, you're right. But
that's
yes, it's not true or it's not going to happen. But my question is, why has it happened?
Because it's a failure of planning.
And the
end of the
housing
day.
plan.
I know we're already.
Excuse me, I think I have to cut here.
Yes.
We have
understand.
so many.
Thank you so much for coming, and especially our candidates. I think in certain questions, they are not happy with current policy too. So we are on the same side.
Yeah.
But now, this is the opportunity for us to learn what kind of new ideas they have can make a difference. So we know who to vote, right?
Yeah.
On February 27th.
On the 27th.
Before February 20th. That's the last day to vote. I suggest you make a plan to vote
Early
during
voting.
advance vote.
Yes.
Yes, just
And
in case
you-
there's snow like today, or even worse,
Yeah,
Yeah.
in case you don't know, we actually have websites. So your answers will be known to our community.
Oh,
So it's
excellent.
not only those people you see,
Yeah.
but also those you don't see yet. And of course, thank you so much for your coming, and we are very happy with your answers. At least I can say
Yes.
from my own perspective. And also, I think that I can tell that you care, and you share our concerns too.
So it's worth noting who's not here.
Yeah.
The conservatives are not.
Yes, it's visible. It's all the very best to you guys.
Thank you.
And best of luck on the 27th and beyond.
Exactly.